everybody, and welcome to a Wednesday afternoon here on Kobold Press's Twitch channel. I am your resident Kobold Dot. Just a little sick. It's fine. I'll be fine. Anybody got I'd say a cure wounds, but it's really like a proper cure sickness, y'all. But I'm really excited to be here because today, instead of just listening to me talk at you, I'm going to get to talk with some people. And not just any people, but the Dias Cast podcast is joining us because they are doing maybe some things in Midgard. Maybe. So we'll save all of the announcements and spilling of beans for the end of today. But I want to remind you to stick around because at the end, we're actually going to be listening to a chunk of the podcast. So you can hang out with us and chat and actually get to be with the cast as we listen to some of the incredible stuff they're making. But that being said, let's go ahead and let you all introduce yourselves. Tell us, obviously who you are. You're with the podcast, but, the big question always is, how did you get involved in D&D? Like, where did it start? Who scratched your itch? How did it happen? And we're going to go, because we read left to right, so we're going to go left. Griffin, you're up first, actually.
Into D&D, the concept was introduced to me by my father, who's in with us right now. I don't know where he is in here, but here he is.
Yeah, just point a direction.
Yeah.
We'll figure it. One of them.
We'll fix it in post. So it was just recently revealed to me that the origin story has been falsified. He mentioned he has amazing stuff in the basement about like notebooks of like worlds he's created from when he was in college. It's kind of phenomenal. Amazing. And I really remember as a kid him telling me that he was in a guild with his friends in college called the Mages of the Order of the Silver Ribbon. And I really thought that meant that he and his real life friends made a guild and maybe made shirts or had ribbons on their backpacks or something in college. I'm not sure. It's been revealed to me that he meant the characters, but that's what got me interested, I think.
That seems legit.
God, I mean, it's also so many words of a name. It really hooked me. However, I should say my first actual game was with our third cast member, or fourth cast member who can't be with us today, Diego Stredel. He gave me my first ever D20. I still have it. Here it is.
Aww.
And he DM'd the first game I ever played.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I love, as a GM myself, it's really nice to always hear somebody go, that was your first. Like, that was my first game, and I really loved it. Thank you. It's a really good feeling. So, nice. Well, I feel like you gave a proper introduction, for Kevin too, but Kevin, would you like to tell us about your guild, who you are and your guild?
But more importantly, your guild.
Yeah.
That's why
now that we totally undermined Griffin's desire just now to actually play D&D, let's see how long he lasts for the next hour. For me, I got started in college. I got started with the second edition. It was a buddy of mine who introduced us. We were all he would get very stoned, and we would all sit around in a group. And sometimes the conversation would lag as everyone's sort of gapping out. But he just created a bunch of like amazing characters. Like I remember one of the wizards he created had like a 10 intelligence, and so and was an alcoholic. So his only real spell was he could do soup breathing. So he would pass out in his soup, and he created a spell so he could breathe in his soup. So it was never any use in the game, and he never did anything. He just wandered around, and he had chef's tools, and sometimes he'd make lunch. So it was that sort of oddball start, very sort of non-tactical, very quite a bit different than games I've played since then, where people are deadly serious about it. But it really instilled in me the whole idea of using it as a tool to have fun and play with, rather than a tactical board war game kind of thing idea. I missed once I stopped playing 2E 20 years ago. I missed most of the other iterations, and then got back into it with 5E just a couple of years ago.
Okay. And thus podcast. Yeah, that's
podcast.
5e
Yeah.
podcast. Yeah.
And thus podcast. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to have you here, Kevin. And last but certainly not least, Madeline, tell us who you are. How did you get started?
Yeah. In context, I'm still like a relatively new D&D player. I started playing only a couple of years ago when I was finishing up university. And I played over the summer with a group of my friends, and I played a rogue thief, and I played it completely wrong. But I had a really, really patient and kind DM, and it's actually his birthday today.
Oh, happy birthday to your
birthday.
kind
Shout out
GM. Yeah.
to my very first GM.
Was that Brent?
It was Brent, yes,
Oh,
my
happy
very
birthday,
good friend.
Brent.
Yeah, shout out. We played a homebrew game of his, and my character actually ended up like falling in love with and marrying the main villain. And I remember Brent saying to me, in all of the groups I've ever played this campaign with, no one has ever done that. And I think when he said that, it just like clicked for me. I was like, oh my God, you really can like do anything in this game. Like you can change fate with a couple of really good rolls. And I think that was where I was like, oh, this is gonna be my life now, isn't it? And I think, yeah, that's when I really started throwing myself into it. And it's
that.
been
Can I
great.
ask, how did you play a rogue thief wrong?
I think I was trying to just go completely barred with it, and it was fine. Like it worked, but I just didn't know what I was doing. I was not very sneaky. I like did my stats all wrong. So
I put it all into performance.
I really did. I really
That's
did.
nice.
I mean,
Yeah.
it could be a sneaky rogue, still coin right from your pocket while I'm performing.
Rogue
While
could be
I'm
the face.
performing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
rogue,
okay.
rogue can be the face. Yeah, who said rogue can be the face?
There we go. Philosopher.
And if you can say that it's choice and not accident,
Yeah,
then it becomes
absolutely.
interesting and not
Right.
unskilled.
Playing
Yeah.
against type, yeah.
So it sounds like you're tabled then. You're like the table for the podcast runs the gamut of like, decades worth of knowledge of D&D and
Careful there, Dot.
decades.
Careful with that.
Hey,
Decades.
I got decades under my
Ancient.
belt. Don't. I can say decades too. Don't worry about it. It's okay. I only say it in love. I swear. Some new players, which is really, really cool. So let's just start out. Like, how did the podcast come to be? What is this thing you call the Diaz podcast? Diazcast podcast. What do we need to know?
Well, it came about with conversations between Griffin and myself. We had started talking about it probably a year and a half ago
Probably.
in terms of performance and looking at options. And we had both been involved with a live performance group that was doing it on stage back when there was on stages to do it with.
Mm-hmm.
And this sort of came out as an evolution of that in terms of creating a story, using the 5e, the mechanics of 5e to create a radio play.
Yeah.
And, we connected with Maddie and Diego, actors that the Griffin knows. And it sort of grew organically from that point. The idea that we're going to do we wanted to make it a podcast because we didn't want to ask people to commit to like sitting down to watching.
Yeah.
They can do it while they're doing dishes, and we wanted to make something a little bit different in the sense of, well, for me, again, being sort of a latecomer to listening to a lot of the podcasts just in the last couple of years. One of the things that I really enjoy, and this is one of the things we're striving for, is that idea of creating the life, creating the humanity, creating the humor inside the world rather than breaking it. So rather than stepping out of your character or stepping out of the world to make comments about modern world things, and of course some of that happens automatically for sure, but just so that we didn't spend too much time talking about iPhones and
Right.
and electric cars.
Like out of
These
damn
character.
kids.
Yeah.
These
their
kids
iPhones.
and their phones.
That's right. Exactly. Anyway.
So the goal was to so as somebody that's a huge fan of radio plays, I used to work for a radio drama company. Because
Oh, really?
Cool.
Yeah,
So
yeah. We
cool.
used to write like original radio dramas, but so I'm all about that, right? Because
That's awesome.
I think that there is no. This is a hot topic thing here on the interwebs, but I don't think there's any right or wrong way to play a TTRPG, right? Like you were saying, like something. You can be any rogue you want to be, even if you want to be the face, right?
That's right.
I love the dedication that you have to kind of this like in character comedy versus this out of character comedy at the table, which is really, really neat. What else do we need to know about your podcast? You have other players. You said they're also actors.
Yeah, Griffin, why don't you talk about Diego?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about Diego all day. Our fourth and final member, Diego Stredel. He was an actor here in our hometown of Calgary, and we kind of ran in each other's circles, but didn't really know each other. We never actually met, and then we both went to theater school, and we were in the same class, and it was the kind of like very heavy conservatory theater school. Where it's you and 11 other people and you're together for 3 years. So we got very close, and he's an excellent dude.
That's awesome.
I think he's out in Vancouver right now. He cannot come to this because he is currently working on a video game that I cannot talk too much about, but it's very cool.
That's very exciting.
Yeah. Oh, it's so rad. I'm so excited. But yeah, he kind of got me into my first ever my first ever experience of D&D, and he's one of my best friends. So I was like, hey man, I know you're busy, but what if we record what if we just do like once a month, like do like batch record? Would you do it? He's like, yes. And he was very good. I brought him on because he's I don't think he'd call himself this, but he's a great improviser in the sense that like I also played a rogue thief for my first game. And I don't remember how I played it. I'm sure it wasn't great, but he was very good at like whatever I wanted to do was like, let's make this very cool just in case. So he's good at rolling with punches and good at good at taking stuff up to the kind of the next level in terms of storytelling.
Yeah.
That's. Listen, we could take up this whole stream with me
like
talking about Diego if we have
crush.
to.
Yeah, listen.
I do, 100%.
I
really
love
do
it
is
so
the
much.
problem.
Okay, so beyond all of you, what about your characters? What are what's the table made up? Make up.
Maddie,
Right.
you go.
Oh, well, yes, I play a character named Maeve Maldarava. She's a 16-year-old Dampier celestial warlock. Yes. And she rocks. She reminds me a lot of myself as a 16-year-old, which I think is kind of it's easy for me to vibe with her.
I thought you were going to say therapeutic. I thought you were going to say go with therapy.
I could see you with some fingerless gloves.
Oh, I had the whole thing. I do not even.
Good
we
stuff.
could take up this whole stream with.
All right, end of the stream is actually
aesthetic.
going to be a picture of Maddie's childhood. Here we go.
Yeah, so I play her. She's got like some combat magic, bit of healing. It's kind of nice balance. Griffin, did you want to talk about Gideon? Because you're here.
Yeah, I'm here. I'll talk about Gideon. I play a bear folk who I've kind of flavored as a panda bear folk, named Gideon. Gideon Sweets is his name, and he's a rogue swashbuckler. So I'm back to my rogue roots. I actually think I maybe chose swashbuckler because that is how I played my rogue thief. Is almost no use of stealth. I kind of just ran and was like, I want to stab them. So swashbuckler gives you bonuses for being so reckless, and that's kind of why I went with that. We also have a whole pirate theme going on, which I'm a huge fan of. Yeah, Gideon Sweets, son of Telia and Montserrat Sweets, my two moms, who are famous rogues.
Nice.
Kevin, do you want to talk about?
Do you know what I love about that?
Hey.
You don't come from a background of like, I'm an orphan thief. My
Right.
parents aren't
Yes.
around. I love that you have two moms. That's so cool.
I grew up on the streets, and I had to fend for
So
myself
awesome.
and eat rats.
Survival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a fine, cool childhood,
Yeah, it's fine.
and
Okay.
it comes across to how
that's
cocky
nice.
Gideon is.
Well, I also have a very special place for bear folk. A couple weeks ago, chat helped me build a dancing bear folk. So
Amazing.
he's a dancing bear. Yeah. That was a lot of fun. I'm waiting for the prime time for somebody to let me play this bagpipe carrying dancing bear.
Oh my god, bagpipe!
Is it like a sword dancer?
Yeah. No, he's a monk.
amazing.
I think. What did we choose? We chose monk. Chat. I can't remember. It was a mess. Chat got carried away. I blame you, chat. Also, I want to welcome.
And I love you, chat.
I think that should be one of Gideon's mothers right there.
Yeah, dancing bear.
Don't change the lore on Kobold chats. We already have it episode 0.
I do want to welcome in all of our raiders. Thank you, Gen Con TV, for bringing in your party. We appreciate it. We're sitting here chatting with the Dias Cast podcast, everybody, if you're new and have just joined us. All right, so now the big question. So you kind of got this mix of characters, but you're playing in Midgard.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Kevin, why Midgard? Because you could have homebrewed it, right? You could have chose what you needed to, but I'd love to hear like what drew you to Midgard.
What drew me to Midgard was the Western Waste. I wanted to go with some sort of post-apocalyptic thing that was we're still working that kind of stuff out, the logistics and the canon around all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to step away from the conventional, medieval style village where you wander into a tavern and then there's a castle off in the distance and that kind of stuff. So I took the Western Waste, and one of the things the two things that I loved about it that sort of anchored me there was the first thing is that we were coming out of or had gone through that giant mage war. So where all the various cities had battled, that gave me free reign to sort of create landscape any way I wanted to because of the fact that it had magic integrated in it. And I also, I didn't know about this when I first chose it, but I love the whole idea about the ancient ones, like the fact that there are these monolithic, titanic kaiju sort of wandering slowly across the plains. I just think in terms of just how that would shape character life, if you have that thing constantly looming over you, how does that change how you view life?
For sure.
That changed your life.
Yeah. How does it change your life to have this
Constant
titanic
fear.
creature? Yeah.
Wow.
And constant fear is interesting. Constant fear is way better than a happy little panda bear dancing on the deck of a boat with his two
My
moms.
laugh is great.
Right. And also, of course, it was also a chance for these guys to choose some characters or some races and things that they weren't familiar with. So all three of them, although I didn't require it, all three of them chose Midgard specific races. Our third player is a piney. His name is Chisk, and he is just learning to cope with the society and life and villages and other people. And
poor Piney.
he's Diego's playing
He's
him as very
overwhelmed.
sort of gentle and sort of wide-eyed. And Diego, you can kill me if that's not actually how you're playing them. But
Sorry, Diggs. It's set.
Yeah, it's
Sorry,
starting out. It's funny. We have
Yeah.
a Piney. We've been playing through the Scarlet Citadel actually in a show
right.
here on the channel, and we have a Piney in the group. And let me tell you, it's interesting because he also is playing the Piney very. He's non-violent, so we know he doesn't kill anything. I was like, did you know this is a dungeon crawl, right? Scarlet Citadel's a dungeon crawl.
You have to do this.
Gonna have to.
What if they're already dead? What if they're undead? Will you kill an undead? So that's been very interesting, and but it's made for really interesting roleplay to be like, no, I want to do non-lethal damage. Like I just want to knock the thing out. Like we're not gonna kill this dire owl bear. We're definitely gonna tie it up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Because Diego's also playing a knowledge cleric, and his knowledge cleric is he's not doing like grand arcane mysteries. Like he's starting at the base level of like, excuse
Reading.
me, Mrs. Dampier, what do you eat? Like just like super baseline, like, hey, what do we do here? What are we doing? Which I love.
Yeah.
I love the level 1 knowledge cleric acquiring base level knowledge.
But that's kind of cool for the audience too, right? Because somebody that's totally new to the setting can come in at that angle, right? And actually learn something about the lore or that they may not have otherwise have. That's actually kind of cool.
It worked out pretty well in that sense.
Yeah.
yeah, although he doesn't know how to read yet either.
No,
so
he doesn't.
he's really starting.
So yeah, no
starting
candle
from
cube coming up
scratch.
real quick. Yeah.
Very great. But well, I think that's cool. All right.
Yeah, and then sorry, just to finish off
yeah,
that,
no,
just
by
to
all means.
answer that more fully. The other thing I loved about Midgard as I learned more about it and as I got into it in a broader scale was, with the other big world that's out there, there's a lot of development in very specific areas, but there's a lot of blank spots and things. And there's also a lot of worry about creating canon because something might come out and counteract what you've created.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, although obviously everything's still there's tons and tons of details to develop, there's a good broad stroke of the content, which allows me as the DM to improvise a lot of things when they ask the random, unexpected, totally useless, but time-consuming, and yet really enjoyable, and I appreciate it kind of questions.
Are you talking about the soup tower?
Now we're airing it out. Yeah, the soup tower.
Is it?
You
Is
don't
this
know
about
that
the
cannon
soup tower?
so quick.
The soup tower is great. Soup tower is great. We're going to definitely set some things there. We'll see what Wolfgang comes up with around soup tower.
That's right. And the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
Get on it, Wolfgang.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, so the Western Wastes. You told us a little bit about what drew you there. That's actually, I've been doing my Kobold Press homework, and been reading a lot of the Midgard lore. But that's actually an area I don't know a lot about. Do you want to give everybody there in chat a little bit of info on what they can expect of the Western Wastes, other than these ginormous, giant titans?
Creatures,
Titans. I don't know what else to call them. Yeah.
What they are is metal. They're so metal.
So
They're
metal.
so metal.
Cool.
Yeah. We'll see what you think in a few episodes.
I'm nervous. Sometimes we're recording and we're doing little goof offs and stealing from the alchemist, and I forget that there's giants in the world. So
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've completely
I'm scared.
forgotten every
I'm so
episode.
scared.
Yeah. So, and again, obviously, this is my interpretation of everybody's open, create their own interpretations of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that the elements that I think are significant for us are the fact that aside from a very few sort of isolated, fortified cities or a place like the seat of Mavros, it's pretty sort of Mad Maxian out there, right? So it's very much, I see a lot of barbarians. I can imagine a lot of, traveling groups, a lot of gypsy style things. I see lots of little chiefdoms forming up. Obviously, it's very closely connected to the Dust Goblins. So there's some things around that. The two or three conventions that we're integrating into it are a lot of the metals. So whether that's armor, shields, swords, spears, whatever, a lot of that stuff doesn't last. So in the area of the Western Waste, because of this sort of salty, damp air, salty, lingering magical effects, the acidic effects
salty.
of the ancient ones, a lot of that metal, a lot of the weapons and things, unless it's newly brought in, won't last. So the focus is going to be more on either brand new weapons constantly if there is a source for them, or creating items from carcasses. So
It's kind of cool though.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's great.
In a metal kind of way.
Yeah.
Heavy metal kind of
So metal.
It's so metal that there is no metal. And there is that kind of stuff for sure. But one of the things that I've incorporated into our fumble chart is if you have a serious set of bad luck, which turns out is possible with these guys. If you have a serious set of bad luck, then you could actually break your metal weapon and then you're scrambling for stuff. So it's a matter of finding monster parts, harvesting parts. I have a whole sort of subclass NPCs called bone jobbers, whose job is to make new items out of body parts and things, and they will travel around and they will offer up. Gold is a little bit sketchy. There's not a standard gold piece. There's different trade coins and discs and things like that, but they'll offer up items for trade in exchange for specific body parts. So that's one of the things that we're going to be doing on an ongoing basis, not to make it sort of the point, but to have it as this sort of functioning reality that the characters just live and deal with.
Yeah. Very cool. So you are running through a very specific, I say you're running through, you are utilizing a very specific Kobold Press piece, right? Module in the podcast.
Right.
Cat and mouse. What are it's always interesting, right? Because as a GM, Kobold produces such great stuff like Scarlet Citadel, which is like I said, dungeon crawl. But it takes forever. If I went page by page, y'all, it would take forever to get through Scarlet Citadel if you went page by page through that dungeon. So I think as GMs, I'm always looking for that inspiration. I'm looking for the thing that's like driving me, inspiring me. Like you said, the waste here really inspired you. But what about cat and mouse? Like, what are you using? How are you utilizing? Without giving spoilers.
Well, the cat and mouse I thought was an excellent intro because there's lots of stuff going on. There's lots of opportunity to introduce interesting NPCs, and it is pretty open-ended, right? It's sandboxy in a controlled sense. And I think for establishing a campaign, not even a full campaign, but just a series of adventures, one of the things I love is have the characters meet a bunch of different people right off the bat. And what I'm trying to do is basically duplicate what I think would be sort of the realistic situation of these brand new people wandering into town and all of a sudden just having events start to happen to them. And then the beauty of that is that the characters can then sort of pick up whatever thread they want and we can riff off of that. So, and this has happened right away. We're only 5 episodes in, but already the initial direction I had intended has shifted sideways just because of the interaction of the characters with the NPCs. Now, I'm
going to circle back to that. I want to hear what you had planned.
Yeah, I also do.
Sorry, keep going.
Making notes, good. Circling back.
Yeah. Now, obviously, on a more general level, Cat and Mouse is set in a desert city. It's set in the Southlands, so we're not using it there. But because of this area, because it's the fact that it is a wasteland, because there is lots of dust and sort of, I was going to say dust and despair. I think it lends itself well. Now, the other thing that I've changed is that. Yeah, I guess it's okay. I'm just quickly scanning the story in my head. Yeah. The other thing I've changed is that it's not a permanent city. It's a tent city that has arisen around the seat of Mavros. So this happens every year during Mavros's mustering. And this is a tent city that literally builds up around the seat of Mavros itself. The seat of Mavros is really the only sort of permanent structure there. So all the adventures that the characters are having or will have in the next little while basically come from a city that's built from wagons and tents and temporary structures. Mm-hmm. So we had some fun around that kind of stuff. They had a 3-story tent wagon with festering heath to climb. There was a few other things around that, but I found it's more about the story itself that draws me to any kind of published adventure. Mm-hmm. There's I think, as you sort of alluded to, the fact that there'll be individual points to go, oh yeah, that's cool for that reason.
Yep.
And the idea is really we're taking the story, we're twisting it a little bit, and we're shifting it to make it our own, but it really, hopefully, is recognizable as the story, or at least mostly recognizable as the cat and mouse story if you go back and read it after the fact.
All right, cool. All right, now we have to circle. So I'm going to go to the two of you as players because we're hearing all the GM stuff. We're like hearing the planning and what where inspiration comes from. But you've been playing in this sandbox world or in this world. What is I would say, what has that been like? But I imagine there's been like highlights. You said there's been some bad dice rolls.
Diego's not rolling good.
Okay, great.
No.
Talk to us about the characters in this world, like going through this plot line, this story.
It is interesting to me to hear Kevin describe it as sandbox. That makes me very nervous in the sense that what Kevin is really good at as a DM is the rest of the world events don't pause while you decide to focus on one thing. So he's introduced all these characters and there's really like 5 or 6 directions we could have gone. And we're talking like, we'll do that after. But really, if that's the world he's running, those things might be gone or those people might be dead, which is nerve-wracking. And now I'm questioning all of my choices. Starting us off in the seat of Mavros has been very fun because it's kind of lawless. There's not a whole bunch of rules. The town guards are busy. So, we stole a thing from Festering Heath. I cut open, I think, the whole second floor of his tent wagon
You did
with
some
my
vandalism.
scimitar. Some vandalism. And there's no ramifications so far, which is kind of fun in like a role-playing aspect of like, you get to decide your own morality kind of in this town, right? Because there are still rules, but only pertaining to the tournament, not to like quality of life. So it's I kind of like, especially coming from a roguish pirate background, kind of deciding what your code is. What's your honor among thieves in this sense. It's a great place to start rather than having 40 episodes to figure out exactly what you stand for and then being like, I don't like this. Trying to figure it out, this kind of waste of a town and trying to figure out what the rules are. I really like.
Well, and the thing with that too is we as characters are the law. Like when we got to
that's right.
the Seat of Mavros, we all signed up to be the foe fighters, which are like deputies for the tournament, right? And so we're literally the law bringers, and we're committing crimes, which is just a very interesting thing to play. And it's definitely throwing my characters, because Maeve is a very naive kind of young character. She's like spent her whole life in seclusion and she doesn't really know a whole lot about the world. She came from a vampire keep. So learning about her own moral code as we go along it's a really fun experience as a player. I'm like, oh, this is literally a kid who is being shaped by
a child.
This is a child.
Child.
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
Just to interject there, Dot, just so you have a little bit of background. My reasoning for the Seat of Mavros with this tent town, since he's the god of fighting, if you're coming to worship Mavros and you can't take care of yourself, then Mavros isn't interested in talking to you.
Right.
So fighting and that kind of stuff is totally open. And these guys as foe fighters, and by the way, I don't know if I've ever clarified this. This is foe as in FOE.
Yeah.
Yeah, not fake fighters.
Not fake fighters.
I didn't know that.
Faux fur.
Yeah, no, I thought FOUX.
I definitely thought it was FOUX or
Oh my
FAUX.
God.
Right here
We're
on
like-
Kobold Press, we all learned something today.
We all
the
learned
guild
something.
wasn't real and it's faux fighters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the foe fighters, because all of the fighters are devoted to Mavros and they want to see the final fights, the mustering events, they bring in non-fighter types to keep the peace, although not technically not keep the peace, to calm down the actual rough edges and things. Now, again, this is not Midgard. This is Kevin's Midgard.
Right.
That there's foe fighters and they
Kevin
wouldn't
Guard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kevin Cork.
it's Cork Guard.
Oh boy.
Yeah. But anyway, so I'm setting it up as a very free form thing that way so that these guys can develop. Because I mean, all three of them actually are very innocent. They've all come from the Bears had such a great upbringing with his two things, and the community. I loved the reference where the community raises the bears, so the bear kids
That's
can just
so
wander
great.
around and just get sandwiches wherever they want.
Yeah, I guess this food's mine now.
Sounds
Yeah.
so nice.
And Maeve comes from money, so it's dark evil money, but it's still money.
It's
It's like
dark evil money.
Dark evil money is the exact same currency as
Some would say blood money.
Yeah.
Oh.
It spins the
Oh,
same.
beautiful. And the Piney is like was 2 weeks ago he was a tree, so he's definitely on a voyage of discovery.
So this is interesting. Somebody in chat brought this up about the kind of acknowledging the morals of a character, like the moral standing of a character. And a place like this,
Yeah.
it feels like maybe that is few and far between. Maybe even in the group, or is the group is this more of like a search for where you stand on certain moral quandaries?
Ooh.
Ah.
One of the recent episodes we have recorded but not released yet, we have encountered the Wagon of Doom.
Oh.
And
Ooh.
in the episode, in the tournament, thanks for coming to Kobold Chats. Here's a little sneak peek. In the episode, it's kind of like a running it's a running of the bulls, but of attendees of the tournament to run and get last day tickets.
I got it.
And this wagon,
it's called It's called Rush Seats. It's
Rush
the
Seats,
Rush
thank
Seats
you.
are released.
You're right. Absolutely.
So everybody has to rush up there.
That's awesome.
And I said it. Sorry, go ahead.
And the wagon is going through the crowd and kind of killing some people. Try to get tickets. And
Slashing.
it's competitive. Yeah, it's competitive in that like there's limited tickets, but this thing has like scythes and spears coming out of it. And the town is supposed to be like, oh yeah, everyone fight, right? But there is technically a rule that you have to run. And also there's like grandmas and kids running to get tickets. And there's this wagon with scythes with, I think, kobolds. Was it kobolds or goblins? Anyway, they're stabbing at just other attendees. So we're like,
it's like the Purge. It's kind of like
right.
It's like the Purge.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So as a group, you go, we're going to shut that down. That's going to be a no-no,
How do
I
we
think.
burn this wagon? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So there will be some moral quandary.
Yeah. I think in the same way that there's no set laws in this place, you also get to, it's kind of the lawful evil, right? You can kind of put your own laws in because no one will get mad at you for putting your own laws in. I don't think any of us are lawful evil. I don't think any of us are evil. I guess I don't know Maddie's alignment. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's I'm done talking. You go, Maddie.
No, I think, again, just from Maeve's perspective, like she's a Dhampir, so she's half human and half vampire. So I think even just the moral gray of that, because vampires are traditionally evil creatures, I think her journey especially will be a lot of internal coming to terms with like who she is, where she even came from, because she's got this whole thing where her family is probably not who they say they are. It's a whole big thing. So I think
And talk about your patron.
And yeah, her patron is a unicorn.
Because why wouldn't it?
Yeah. So she's a sparkly goth, which is already just two sides of the same coin.
Love that aesthetic.
But yeah, just I think as we go along, she's going to encounter, and like all of the characters are going to encounter, really hard decisions they have to make. Just because, and like Kevin said, we're all relatively innocent. And so seeing how a lawful evil place, or a place with just no moral compass whatsoever,
A true neutral city.
Just affects us. Yeah. And I think
and now I want to see what happens after a period of time when y'all have to go back into like civilized society.
Oh,
I
yeah.
am nervous. I am
you
nervous
turn
when I have
so
to
back
deal.
accidentally,
We're all just like hardened and like
where there are
City guard-
rules
yeah.
and jails.
City
and
guard
city
will walk
guards,
up.
Yeah,
You can't do that. And I punch him in the mouth.
great. Yeah.
Right.
Fight City.
So, sort of happy-go-lucky, wholesome murder hobos.
Okay.
murder hobos.
Innocent hobos, some would say.
Innocent hobos.
I think your little wagon of doom was pretty murder hobo-ish.
Running over grandmas.
I mean,
Yeah.
well, that's very enlightening. I feel like that gives us a good
That was a lot of stuff.
understanding of where and how this podcast is trucking along. But I have some interest of less about the podcast specifically and more about your personal interest in why D&D and the table. It seems that some of you are coming from performance backgrounds, right? Which is very exciting. Maybe you're not. That's cool too. But I love, I know I'm a storyteller, right? And there's something about tabletops that I think really bridge a gap in like communal storytelling in a way that we don't really get in other places anymore. A lot of stories get told at us. And so I think there's just something really beautiful about it. But I'd love to hear, you could have made any podcast you wanted. Why a D&D podcast?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Talk first too many times. Somebody else go.
Okay, I'll go. Well, when Griffin approached me to do the podcast, it really wasn't even a question because I, like you said, I'm a storyteller by heart. I remember being like a little kid and playing pretend with my like younger sister in the backyard. We would run around and pretend we were Pokemon. It was a whole thing. Um,
Hell yeah!
but some of those,
what Pokemon? What Pokemon
that's
were
a
you?
good question.
I was always Eevee because then I could pretend to evolve into like a bunch
So
of different
many
things.
options.
Yeah,
Very good.
I never like to limit myself. But those were some of my most memorable moments as a child, and I feel like D&D is like being able to play pretend as an adult.
Yeah.
In ways that can be like funny or serious or scary. It's a way to tell a story by being actively involved in it, and having it change as you go and not knowing where it's going to go. And that is like, it wasn't even a question. I was like, yes, obviously I want to tell this story with you guys in whatever way it manifests.
So have you had kind of like, you said you're what, 5 or 6 episodes out? How many? I don't know how many episodes out all of you have, but what is that? Is there been like a really great moment, a fantastic moment that even surprised you as a player in that like realm of storytelling? Like you're so in it, you know, in the now.
For me as a DM, watching these guys interact and create the connections already really early in, because of course each session is only an hour and a half, so it's not like we've had, you know, hours and hours and hours of connecting. So the fact that they are able to create what I think are meaningful connections right away is both great and inspiring.
Oh, that's really nice.
That's so nice.
I think. Oh no, go Griffin, go.
Oh, I would say the reason that I got involved in D&D, but also, I mean, in TTRPGs in general, I've also done Monster of the Week a few times, which is I'm a big fan of. For me, I do come from a storytelling background, but it's a lot more interesting for people who don't think that they are storytellers. Like in the way that the game kind of tricks you into believing what you're saying and feeling something. My favorite thing is when I have a buddy who works in oil, and he started playing D&D, and there was a moment where like an NPC died, and an NPC that he like really, really liked. And I watched him like grab his stomach, and he was like, "Oh, this sucks." I was like, "Yeah, but there we go." And so then this oil rig guy was sitting there like doing this like big long character monologue about why this NPC mattered before he avenged him. And I was like, "Yeah,
That's awesome."
So seeing that switch in people, easily my favorite part of the game. Collective storytelling and doing bits with your buds is nothing better.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And the collective storytelling, as you referenced, Dot, actually, as all of you have referenced, is I think, yeah, it's vital, and it's something that it's easy to lose because everything is so packaged and produced, and yeah, you sit and you passively watch other people tell highly produced stories, and the idea, the sort of almost sort of, you know, centuries old idea of a group sitting around and telling a story, and then on top of that creating the story as they go, I think that is super engaging. One of my players,
like a little bit of gambling,
oh, for sure, it is absolutely about gambling. And then when I watch like non-actor, non-performance type people get engaged, like your oil guy, Griffin, you can see them get past that hump of being the passive observer, especially if there's 2 or 3 sort of loud, outgoing actor types in the group. You can see that person just tentatively do a voice or try a thing, or without realizing it, feeling like they're engaging. It's amazing. And I think that distinction, one of the professors I had in university talked about how he believed that arts in general should not be a separated standalone profession. I was studying to be an actor, so I thought that was a stupid idea. But now looking back on it, his idea was that someone could work on the oil rigs, or they could go be a doctor, and then they would come home and dance, or they would draw, or they would do theater. And the idea of creating a stronger, tighter knit community around that performance thing, I think is super powerful. And I think it's something that modern society, to a certain extent, you know, excluding all our cool D&D players, of course, has lost, because it becomes literally the Netflix watch 4 episodes and just sit there vaguely, barely, not even really engaged in that story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the D&D aspect is what it does is it takes a familiar setting, people who are familiar with some fantasy element, and then it integrates that sense of participation. And also for a lot of people, the idea of being able to make choices that matter. Like one of the core concepts is, I mean, as the DM for me is to make sure that everything that they say, well, okay, hold on. Almost everything they say is honored in a sense. Even if I don't necessarily respond to it right away, a lot of that stuff is kept and we try to reintegrate it. Because I mean, the DM is not creating the story. The DM is creating the setting.
Right, correct.
The characters are doing the dialogue. And it's about building that story together. Some great quote from one of the sort of more famous DMs is when you hear people talk about the game, this is as advice to DMs. When you hear people talk about the game, they're never talking about the story. They're talking about what they did in the story. So characters remember what they did rather than this grand, amazing, super adventure that Kevin put together, right? So it's about creating those personal moments for sure. Absolutely.
Madeline, I know you were gonna say something as well.
Oh, it's gone.
Oh, okay, perfect. Great. Wonderful. Well, okay, so it's interesting because I play a lot of tabletop now, right? And so not all of it is even fantasy based, which I think is also something really interesting. I think we accept fantasy as a world in which we want to tell stories in now more than ever before. Like there's something kind of cool about fantasy now that wasn't really cool once before. But we tell tabletop you can tell a story all kinds of ways, right? From kids on bikes to sci-fi and so forth and so on. But I know that we draw so much inspiration from even those cookie cutter pieces of entertainment that are put at us. We draw inspiration from those. So I'm interested what kind of inspiration, other than Mad Max, because I've heard that a few times, is kind of going into this. What's going into your characters, because we pull inspiration for the way we build our characters, right? And then the way that you're actually shaping doom wagons and things of that nature. Like where are your pop cultural inspirations coming from?
Oh, I feel a lot of the kids from It, like you said, kids on bikes, just the whole coming of age, not knowing what you're supposed to be doing, but finding friends and latching onto them, especially as Maeve is a really deeply lonely character. So I think she found these guys and is like, oh, okay, they like me. Okay, I'm going to stick with them. And through that, she's going to find herself. And so definitely the It kids for sure.
That.
Yeah. We definitely need a Pennywise now if we're talking about actual murder.
You don't need to do that.
We don't want to do that.
We don't need that.
I think maybe my closest cultural touchstones, this might be a deep cut, is the two fellas from The Road to El Dorado.
Oh my
gosh,
God. Miguel and Tulio.
Yeah.
I think maybe.
Yeah.
I actually really thought about it. There's a point in one of the episodes where I said I'm going to pull a Sinbad, and that's when I cut down the tent as I write it down. I really think, because I like the kind of I like someone who bumbles often and then every once in a while pulls off this super amazing adventurous thing, but at the end they're like, I didn't mean to do that. So I think the two guys from Road to El Dorado, I couldn't pick one. Gideon might be a mix of both. Those are mine.
Yeah, that's great.
That's a pretty great
touchstone. Yeah, there we go.
I know exactly what you were talking about. Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, and Griffin's bearfolk, by the way, he's 4 feet tall. He's more of a scarred teddy bear.
Yeah, I've described him as very cherubic, but with one kind of meaty cut.
Wow, that was palpable. Meaty cut. That one was good.
Meaty cut.
Sorry about that, everybody. Actually, I'll see myself out.
Sucked.
Kevin, you keep going.
I love it. What about you, Kevin? I mean, as the DM, obviously you were drawn to the waste,
right?
But you've got to be pulling from some really awesome stuff to have such a doom wagon.
Well, what I I think it's an amalgamation of a ton of things. I mean, there's definitely that sort of a Mad Max concept, although we haven't gone that sort of strictly survival, or at least not yet, in terms of that the
I'm
strictness
so
of it.
excited to see how that.
Right.
Ooh.
Good Barry.
And I think any kind of horror that involves a circus or any of that kind of stuff, and then what's layered on top of that is sort of more of a I think you guys referenced it actually in one episode, the sort of that weekend at Bernie's party mode. Because one of the things that I visualize with this tent city is the fact, because it's only around for 2 weeks, it really is sort of a combination of a fair, a stampede. There's all sorts of stuff going on. There's things, and people will eventually disperse and head back into their various cities and worlds, and assuming they're still alive and haven't offered themselves up to Mavros. So it is, I love that idea of that kind of carnival atmosphere with a real edge to it, on top of the fact that these guys are just sort of piling in, and there's people from all over the world, all over the continent, all over Midgard, and all sorts of different styles fighters. I mean, we're just starting to get into some of the more high level conquests. So the idea I had was that there would be, whoever was the mustering champion for your local area, everyone travels to the seat of Mavros, and there are like 130 fighting pits over a week that finally boil down to sort of the final 8 that are become the chosen of Mavros. That's what we're building towards.
Huh. Very cool.
Yeah. Oh, and then there's lots of little things, like we had sorry, just as things occur to me. One of the other things that the characters are stumbling over right now is the fact that I have the rat folk are all polyamorous. So they're all, they're polygamous. They create actual units. And there's a lot of discovery around that as people are trying to figure out those.
God.
And again, that's based. What that's based on is the fact that I used to work in a pet shop, and I used to watch all the pet mice always clumped together. Because whenever you would sell an individual mouse, I always had a little bit of guilt, because the mouse is used to sleeping with a bunch of other mice, and now the fact that this one mouse is being sent off by himself is you don't want to know what's going on in that little mouse brain.
That is really sad.
Now, I do also know that when you used to work at that pet store, you sometimes put a baby carrot in the fish tank and then tricked people by reaching it and getting the baby carrot and convincing people that you ate a fish.
Yeah, that one is true.
Yeah, that's too bad.
We deserve to be best friends. That is such a wonderful prank. I love that so much. I'm such an actual chaos monster in real life that, like, I'd do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was phenomenal watching the kids look at me as I was doing that, and then look at their parents, and then look at me, and you could tell there was like verge of tears.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Is this real? Tell me what just happened.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. All right, well, we are coming down to the last few minutes of our chat today for Kobold Chats. Chat, this is your chance to ask questions of the Dias Cast podcast crew here. If you got a question, drop it in chat. Make sure it says questions on it, because these glasses are real and I'm kind of blind. So just make sure you make it real clear which one's a question, and we'll see if we can't get those answered before the afternoon is out. But I want to remind everybody, stick around. We're going to do a listen through of the last 15 minutes of the last episode that Dias Cast has put out after this. And don't go too far, because at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific today, we launch a brand new show right here on Kobold Press, The Marauders of the Middle Sea. We will be launching our own salty sea pirate adventure with an all-female and non-binary cast. So it should be a very fun dynamic at the table. I'm really, really excited to see what shenanigans they're going to get into in the Middle Sea. So make sure you come back, you stick around for that. And last but certainly not least, if you have missed our run of Scarlet Citadel, you can check that out over on our YouTube. We are very close to closing out this little mini run. It took us like 4 sessions just to get to the Citadel itself, which tells you a lot about our shenanigans. 4 of 6 episodes it took us. So we have just bridged the first layer of this like massive dungeon, which tells you we're definitely not going to get done. So there will be cliffhangers involved. So get caught up. go check out our YouTube, and we'll be back Monday of next week with the finale of the Scarlet Citadel here on the channel. So, all right, so far, no questions in chat, so I'm just going to keep bugging y'all.
Do it.
Well, first of all, let me just say I've got like total DM envy around the sort of production values for your Scarlet Citadel. Like I'm watching you work the technology and work the voices and all that kind of stuff, and I actually don't want my players to watch that because
are you talking about the Course of the Shadow Fae where I'm using all of the crazy voice mods?
Oh yeah, that is the one. Yeah,
that's
sorry.
The one. Yeah,
sorry.
no, you're good. So I'm playing at Scarlet Citadel. I'm playing a Darrow, y'all. I have never lived a better life than living as a crazy Darrow. Not in my whole life.
Nice.
Yeah, he rides a cave goat, who's his best friend. His parents tried to feed him to that cave goat many years ago. He saw the void in the gullet of a goat. It's great. So, but yes,
it was. Sorry, it was Courts. It was
Courts
the
of the Shadow Fae.
Fae.
Yeah, so we have actually closed that one. Thanks for watching. That's really cool. Yeah, it was our little social intrigue campaign. But we'll be well, I can't spoil that. Well, yes, I can. I'm going to spill the beans. We will probably be coming back for season 2 of Courts of the Shadow Fae, because you
heard it here first.
Yeah, they did not. The ending did not bode well for them. They're in some trouble. And I feel like, what good is trouble if we don't get to watch it play out? So we'll be back for more of that. But I really, really appreciate it. Well, as we wrap up, can you tell us where people can check out Diascast?
Griff. Yeah, the Diascast is available pretty much every place that you can get podcasts: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podchaser, Stitcher, Deezer, all of them. I think all of them. If there's one that you have that it's not there, shoot us an email. I'll get it up there, no problem. Yeah. I'm also. We're also putting them up on YouTube very soon. So if you don't have a podcast app or a mobile friendly thing, you can just listen to them straight on YouTube.
Very cool. And where can people find y'all when you're not with Diascast?
For me, I'm only existing Diascast. But
that's my identity now.
Live and breathe.
Yeah, that's that. I live in a tent city of in my own backyard until it gets cold. Griff.
Damn. I'm on all social media, just at Griffin Cork. You can find me places. Another cool thing I'm doing is we produce a web series here in Alberta called Abracadavers that we are producing with the Canadian Media Fund. We're going into season 2, shooting in about 12 days. But you can watch the first season if you go to abracadavers.tv. That's my little plug. Nice. Maddie?
I don't have a plug, but you can follow me on Twitter at Madeline Hunter Smith. And no, that's wrong. That's Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at Madeline Hunter Smith, and you can follow me on Twitter at Madeline H. Smith.
Nice.
I just need to make them the same. I really do. It's too much mental gymnastics.
No, you've made them distinctive.
That's true.
That's right.
All right. So the last thing I always like to do when we have guests on the show is to do a quick round of questions. This is like a speed question. You just answer it however you're feeling. Okay. Right on. Okay, cool. I dig it. Okay. So shake off the nerves. It'll be great. So I'm gonna go backwards instead of forward. So Madeline, you are gonna be first. So go Madeline, Kevin, and Griffin. Each one of you are gonna get a different question. I want you to answer it as fast as you can. Madeline,
Great.
Go.
If you could have any beast to be your best friend, which beast would it be and why?
A very tiny dragon. Why? It's just, they're so cute. It would be cute. It would be cute and small, like homunculus-sized little tiny dragon. Yeah. And it would squeak.
Kevin.
Plus, you just said homunculus.
Homunculus, yeah. Great word. Kevin, if you were going to fall prey to any trap in a dungeon, which trap would it be?
Oh, I'd like to have my head cut off.
Wait.
By what?
She didn't ask what your preference is. Which one would you fall prey to?
Well,
it would be the scythe. It would definitely be the scythe.
The scythe on the doomwagon.
Yeah.
Like, do you mean like the swinging axes?
No, the one that comes out of the wall sideways.
Oh, I see.
Like Indiana
Just
Jones
because
style.
you would end up with that.
Gravitation.
You'd end up with that head with such a surprised look on your face for
And
eternity.
such a clean cut. Yeah.
And it's a clean cut.
Yeah.
And it's no messing around with saving throws or whatever.
You're such a DM at heart.
Yeah. Oh my god. No saving throws.
What I want
I'm never
is
going into dungeon in
clean
this game ever
instant
again.
death. I don't want lingering, raised dead, blah blah blah.
All right, and last but certainly not least, Griffin. If you could be any magical item, what magical item would you be?
Oh God, bag of holding.
Yes, oh my God, I was hoping you were gonna say that. I was hoping you were gonna say that.
I feel like it's not fun or interesting, but God, it's so useful,
It is
and there's
so
so many
useful.
things you can do with it.
You're now
I had
a
a friend.
sentient Griffin bag of holding.
I had a friend fill the entire bag of holding with water, and he was a martial class, but then he just emptied the bag, and the DM let him cast it as like a quote unquote cast like a 6th level tidal wave, because he just went and like emptied the bag and just let all the water down, because I think it all comes out instantly.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a
wow.
little tip.
Well, there you have it. All you kobolds out there in the Warrens, thank you so much for hanging out with us today for Kobold Chats. We'll be back next week, same Kobold time, same Kobold channel, and we'll see you here in just under 2 hours for the premiere of Marauders of the Middle Sea. Make sure that you check out Die Ass Cast, and don't go anywhere. As soon as I let these lovely folks go, we're going to take a little listen at the last 15 minutes of their recent episode. Oh, yes. Until then, don't do anything a kobold wouldn't do. Okay, bye.
Thanks, Dot.